Prince Harry has suffered one of the most damaging public defeats of his post-royal life. Not just a legal defeat, not just an expensive defeat, a reputational defeat. For years, Harry has presented himself as a man on a mission against the British tabloid press. He has spoken about intrusion, grief, privacy, phone hacking, unlawful information gathering, and the role he believes the media played in destroying his mother's life and damaging his own. In his mind, this fight has never been simply about newspapers. It has been about justice, truth, and the forces he believes have haunted him since childhood. But the problem for Harry is that courtrooms do not operate on emotional certainty. They operate on evidence. And in this latest case involving Associated Newspapers, the publishers connected to the Daily Mail and the Mail on Sunday, Harry and the other claimants were dealt a brutal blow. According to the commentary around the ruling, every one of the claims was dismissed. Former Daily Mail editor Paul Dacre responded with force, describing the original allegations as lurid, preposterous, and damaging to journalists who had spent years under suspicion. For Harry, that is devastating, because he did not simply lose a case. He lost part of the story he has been telling about himself. Harry has built a large portion of his public identity around the idea that he is taking on a corrupt system. The palace failed him, the press hounded him, the courts should expose the truth. The public should understand that he is not merely complaining, but fighting a historic wrong.
It is war! The Daily Mail destroy Prince Harry. The Duke of Sussex's public humiliation is now complete. Not only will the cost of his failed lawsuit against the publishers of the Daily Mail further deplete his finances, be clear, Harry is broke. His reputation has been absolutely wiped out. Now, before I bring you news of what Prince William thinks of Harry's reunion with King Charles, which involved Meghan, Archie and Lily back on royal property, take a listen to a raging...
That is a powerful story when people believe it. It becomes a dangerous story when the evidence does not support it. This is why the Daily Mail victory matters so much. The paper was not merely cleared in a quiet technical sense. Its representatives framed the ruling as a vindication of their journalism and a victory for the free press. Dacre's response was not apologetic, it was combative. It made clear that, as far as Associated Newspapers is concerned, Harry's case was not a noble fight for justice, but a costly and unjustified attack on journalism. That changes the balance of power. Harry went into this fight believing he was challenging the press. Now the press can say it has beaten him, and the Daily Mail, whatever one thinks of it politically or stylistically, remains one of the most powerful media institutions in the English-speaking world. It has huge reach, deep resources, and a long memory. Harry may have wanted to expose it. Instead, critics argue, he has given it a reason to scrutinize him even more closely for years to come. That does not mean the press is innocent in every historical sense. It would be absurd to pretend that British tabloid journalism has always behaved well. Phone hacking happened, intrusion happened. Celebrities, politicians, crime victims, and members of the royal family have all had legitimate grievances against sections of the media.
4 years ago, lawyers for Prince Harry, Doreen Lawrence and Elton John accused the Mail, in a blaze of publicity, of placing bugs in homes, cars, cafes and landline phones. We described those charges, some related to stories that were over 30 years old, as lurid and preposterous.
Lurid and preposterous, you couldn't...
Harry's anger did not come from nowhere. He grew up in a world where photographers and headlines were constant, and where his mother's life and death were inseparable from the media machine around her. But the existence of past media wrongdoing does not prove every specific claim. That is the crucial point. Harry can be right that the press has behaved badly and still be wrong about a particular case. He can have suffered intrusion and still fail to prove unlawful information gathering in a specific article. He can feel morally certain and still lose legally. That distinction appears to be one of Harry's greatest weaknesses. He often seems to treat emotional truth as if it should be accepted as legal proof. If something felt invasive, it must have been unlawful. If a story was painful, it must have been obtained improperly. If the press knew something he did not want public, someone must have betrayed him. But journalism is complicated. Some stories come from leaks, some come from friends, some come from public records, some come from ordinary observation, some come from people close to the subject who are quietly briefing, some come from tips, persistence, and professional reporting. Some may come from unlawful methods, and those should be exposed. But a claimant still has to prove which is which. That is where Harry's case appears to have collapsed.
Today, in what was a momentous victory for the Mail, the High Court dismissed every single one of the 97 claims. That is an overwhelming vindication of our journalism.
The judge dismissed every single one of the 97 claims. That never happens. Normally when you sue someone, they will uphold one or two things, such as the forged signature or maybe a little bit of audio that was taken from a voicemail. Nothing! 97 claims against the Daily Mail.
The reporting discussed in the source material emphasised the number of claims dismissed and the scale of the costs involved. The action was described as having cost tens of millions of pounds overall, while wasting enormous court time and placing strain on journalists accused of wrongdoing. Dacre suggested that the case raised serious questions about elements of the legal profession as well as about the claimants themselves. For Harry, the financial consequences could be severe. The exact private arrangements around costs, insurance, and who pays what are not always publicly simple. But the broad point is clear. Litigation of this scale is punishing. Lawyers, hearings, document review, appeals, and court time are expensive. For a man whose post-royal finances are already constantly analysed, losing a case like this adds pressure. Yet the reputational cost may be worse. Harry's brand depends on the idea that he is a brave truth-teller. He is the royal who speaks out, the man who refuses to stay silent, the prince who challenges old systems, the son trying to avenge or at least understand the forces that consumed his mother. But if his legal fights begin to look reckless, the public will start seeing something different. Not courage, obsession, not truth-telling, grievance, not justice, a man unable to let go. This is where Paul Dacre's attack was so damaging. He did not simply defend his newspaper, he turned Harry's own public record against him.
History of British justice. And that line from Paul Dacre is a killer. This is an overwhelming vindication of our journalism, and that's what it's about. That's why I'm so passionate about the Daily Mail, about the Daily Express, the Sun newspaper, the Times, all of these great publications, because they are there to call out people like Harry and his double standards and his wild hypocrisy. Harry doesn't want that. Harry wants to have full control of the narrative, which is why they employ all of those PR people as part of the relentless and ruthless public relations machine of the Sussexes, which never.
He pointed to Spare, Harry's memoir, and the sheer quantity of private family material Harry himself has placed into the public domain. The argument is simple and brutal. How can Harry present himself as the great defender of privacy when he has revealed so much about his own family, his military life, his drug use, his intimate experiences, and his private grievances? That line of attack lands because it exposes Harry's central contradiction. He wants privacy when the press writes about him, but he wants public attention when he writes about others. He wants the right to reveal his pain, but he resents others revealing stories about him. He says the media has invaded his life. But Spare invaded the privacy of other people, including members of his own family who did not consent to being characters in his therapy session, his commercial memoir, or his global publicity tour. That is why the privacy argument has become difficult for him to sustain. This does not mean Harry has no right to privacy at all. Public figures are still human beings. Royal birth does not erase a person's right to dignity, family boundaries, or protection from unlawful conduct. But moral authority matters. If Harry wants to lecture the press about intrusion, he needs to show restraint in his own storytelling. Instead, he has often done the opposite, in spare.
Prince Harry wrote a sad book which boasted about his killing of 25 Taliban, his drug taking, and, in cringe-making detail, how he lost his virginity. There isn't a laundry in the cosmos big enough to wash all the dirty linen he has aired about his own family. For him to complain about his privacy being invaded takes not just the biscuit, but the...
Harry discussed his military service, including the number of Taliban fighters he said he killed in Afghanistan. That passage drew criticism from military figures and commentators who felt it was unnecessary and unwise. Soldiers may have to kill in war, but many veterans speak about that reality with solemnity, not dramatic disclosure. Even if Harry intended to be honest about combat, critics argued that the way the detail was presented created security, moral, and reputational problems. He also discussed drug use, family arguments, intimate relationships, private conversations, and deeply personal moments involving relatives. Each revelation may have served the book's emotional arc. Each may have helped sell copies, but collectively, they made it harder for Harry to claim that he stands above the culture of exposure. He is not simply a victim of exposure anymore. He is also a participant in it. That is the problem Dacre was pressing. Harry has aired so much private material himself that his outrage at press intrusion now sounds selective to many critics. The public does not see a man who wants privacy in principle. They see a man who wants control. Control over which stories are told, by whom, in what tone, and for whose benefit. That is different. Privacy is a boundary. Control is a demand. And Harry's public life has increasingly looked like a demand for control. He wants control over the royal narrative, control over the press narrative, control over his mother's legacy, control over how the public understands his marriage, control over security decisions, control over who is allowed to speak, write, brief, photograph, question, or challenge. The courts are one of the few places where that desire for control meets an independent standard. Harry may believe his own version completely, he may feel wronged, he may have advisors reinforcing his certainty, he may look at old headlines and see only the shadow of unlawful behavior. But in court, belief must become proof. And according to the ruling discussed in the transcript, that proof was not there. The involvement of Doreen Lawrence and Sir Elton John makes the fallout more complicated. Doreen Lawrence is not just another claimant in a celebrity case, she is the mother of Stephen Lawrence, whose racist murder became one of the most important criminal justice stories in modern Britain. Her long fight for accountability has enormous moral weight. The Daily Mail played a notable role in the Lawrence case years ago, famously naming suspects and helping keep public pressure alive. That history made her involvement in this action against associated newspapers particularly sensitive. It is possible for someone to have been helped by a newspaper in one context and still feel wronged by it in another. Life is not simple. Institutions can do good work and also be accused of misconduct. But the symbolism was still uncomfortable. Dacre and others leaned into that history, presenting the Daily Mail as a paper that had fought for justice in the Stephen Lawrence case, and therefore should not be caricatured as merely corrupt or predatory. That argument is powerful because it complicates Harry's preferred narrative. Harry often speaks about the press as though it is a single dark force. But the free press is not one thing. It includes bad behavior and brave reporting. It includes sensationalism and accountability. It can ruin lives, but it can also expose wrongdoing. The same industry Harry despises has in other cases helped bring hidden facts into the light. Dacre also pointed to the Mail on Sunday's publication of the photograph of Prince Andrew with Virginia Giuffre at Ghislaine Maxwell's home, arguing that journalism of that kind contributed to justice for Epstein's victims. Whether one likes the Mail or not, the larger point stands. A free press can be uncomfortable, aggressive, and sometimes deeply irritating, but it can also be essential. Harry's campaign against the press often fails to make that distinction. He talks about damage. He talks about...
Poor Harry. I feel sorry for the way a confused and angry young man has been drawn into this case. The bitter irony is that his mother, Diana, liked the Mail. We were her paper. We took her side in her acrimonious breakup with Charles. She and I would speak and meet. The Mail's superb royal reporter was her friend and confidant.
I feel sorry for the way a confused and angry young man has been drawn into this case. The bitter irony is that his mother, Diana, liked the Daily Mail. We were her paper.
Trauma. He talks about intrusion, but he does not always acknowledge that the same press ecosystem can expose abuse, challenge power, and hold elites accountable, including royals. That is exactly why his defeat is so consequential. It allows his critics to say that Harry was not defending democracy or truth, but attacking journalism because he personally dislikes scrutiny. That may not be entirely fair, but it is the interpretation now gaining strength. The case also affects Harry's relationships with the other claimants. Sir Elton John is an especially interesting figure because of his long connection to Princess Diana and to Harry. Elton was close to Diana, performed at her funeral, and has been a figure of warmth and continuity in the emotional landscape around her sons. For Harry, Elton has represented part of that Diana world: celebrity, friendship, loyalty, and shared grief. But if this case has produced heavy costs and public embarrassment, it is not hard to imagine strain. Sir Elton is enormously successful and wealthy, but success does not make a person enjoy losing. He is used to winning in music, theatre, awards, global recognition, and public affection. Being drawn into a failed legal action of this scale is not a minor matter, even for someone of his stature. The source commentary suggested that Elton may not be inclined to help Harry financially.
Because William is very focused on the legacy and memory of his mother, Diana. And how does William feel about Harry suing the newspaper that Diana liked and trusted? Threatening bankruptcy for an incredible newspaper that defended Diana. And Harry, with his twisted loyalty, goes after a newspaper that helped his late mother. There's no way that William would do that. William, knowing that the Daily Mail had Diana's back.
Whether or not that private detail is accurate, the broader issue is clear. Harry's legal battles do not affect only Harry. They involve other people, other reputations, other bank accounts, and other emotional histories. That is becoming a pattern in Harry's life. When Harry fights, others are pulled into the blast zone. His family is pulled in. His wife is pulled in. His children are discussed. His charities become part of the story. His friends and allies become associated with the outcome. Journalists are placed under pressure. Courts are asked to revisit old stories. The public is asked to take sides again and again. At some point, the question becomes not whether Harry has grievances, but whether his way of pursuing them is destructive. That question becomes even sharper when you look beyond the courtroom. The source commentary also placed Harry's legal defeat alongside other public setbacks, including the turmoil around Centobale, the charity he helped create in memory of Princess Diana. Centobale was meant to be one of the cleanest and most meaningful parts of Harry's life. It was tied to Africa, to children and young people affected by HIV, and to the kind of compassionate work that made Diana so beloved. For years, it gave Harry a purpose that seemed larger than his own personal story. That is why conflict around Centobale felt so damaging. When Harry stepped away amid a dispute,
because his mother's newspaper won, and happy because Harry has finally come into contact with the consequences of his actions. I'm hearing, by the way, that Elton John, who's the greatest genius of music the world has ever seen, can you feel the love tonight? It's my understanding Elton will not help Harry with the costs. Elton could help Harry. Elton's net worth, you got a published net worth of 500-600 million. Excuse me. Elton John is number 4 in the history of music sales on the world planet.
Involving Dr. Sophie Chandauka, the charity's chair, critics saw it as another sign that even the projects linked to Diana's legacy were becoming caught in Harry's wider pattern of conflict. Whatever the internal rights and wrongs of that dispute, the optics were painful. A charity created in his mother's memory became another headline about disagreement, control, reputational damage, and Harry losing influence over something he once helped define. That matters because Harry's strongest public identity has always been service. Before the lawsuits, before the memoir, before the Netflix series, before the endless family interviews, Harry's best work was attached to causes that felt real. Veterans, injured service personnel, children, mental health, and the humanitarian shadow of Diana. When he was focused on that work, he could still command respect from people who did not like his politics, his wife, or his public complaints. But service requires steadiness. It requires the person at the center not to become the story every time. And that is where Harry has gone wrong. When Centre becomes a row, when Invictus becomes wrapped in Sussex headlines, when well-child appearances become another chance to analyse Meghan's absence or Harry's security demands, the cause loses oxygen. The charity may still do good work. The athletes may still be extraordinary. The children may still deserve attention.
The guy is a practitioner of poverty, public failure, reputational damage, and misery. Those are the themes of any interaction with Harry. Those are the hallmarks of any collaboration. So, for example, if I got Harry involved in the Mark Dolan show,
Hi, it's the Duke of Sussex, Prince Harry, and I'm going to be the executive producer of the Mark Dolan show, and it's going to be amazing. We're going to have daily videos. I've had some ideas, creative ideas for the Mark Dolan show.
But the media frame becomes Harry. His mood, his marriage, his lawsuits, his brother, his father, his title, his security, his pain. That is not sustainable for any serious cause. This is why the legal defeat is part of a larger reputational pattern. Harry keeps entering public battles as if each one will finally vindicate him. Instead, each battle seems to make his world smaller. He loses trust inside the royal family. He loses moral authority with sections of the public. He loses the benefit of the doubt with journalists. He loses control of charities that once looked like safe ground. He risks losing friendships and alliances because people associated with him can end up carrying the cost of his choices. The source commentary named several figures who, in different ways, have stood up to Harry or represented obstacles to his narrative. Dr. Sophie Chandauka in the Centre bail dispute, Mr. Justice Nicklin in the Associated Newspapers litigation, Paul Dacre in the press response, and Prince William as the future king who still appears unwilling to trust him. That list matters because it shows Harry is not fighting one enemy. He is fighting everywhere. He fights the press. He fights the palace. He fights the Home Office. He fights the courts. He fights old friends of the royal family. He fights the structures around his charities. He fights his brother's silence. And the more he fights, the more isolated he becomes. There is a deep irony here.
Control of it. By the way, another insult to the memory of his mother. He set that up for Diana. Then there's a public row with Dr. Sophie Chandauka. And then he loses the charity and it's all the bad headlines. Do you think Diana, God bless her up in heaven, is happy about that? By the way, there are a few key figures that we must acknowledge who recently have dealt with Harry and put him in his place and have won. And I'm so happy about it. Those people are Dr. Sophie Chandauka, the controller, the CEO, if you like, the chairwoman of Centre. She has a row with Harry. She gains control of his charity.
Harry left royal life saying he wanted freedom. But freedom should have expanded his world. It should have made him less reactive, less dependent on the palace, less emotionally controlled by the British media, and more able to choose his own future. Instead, he often seems more trapped than before. In the palace, at least, Harry had a role. It may have been a role he resented, it may have felt suffocating, it may have placed him behind William forever. But it gave him duties, staff, structure, patronages, tours, military associations, and a clear public function. Outside the palace, he has had to build his own structure. That is much harder than complaining about the old one. Building requires discipline, litigation requires grievance. Harry has become very good at grievance. The question is whether he has become good enough at building. So far, the evidence is mixed at best. The media projects have generated headlines, but not a stable creative identity. The legal actions have generated drama, but not lasting vindication. The royal meetings generate speculation, but not trust. The charitable work still matters, but it is too often overshadowed by personal controversy. The American life gives him distance, but not peace. This is the great danger for Harry. If every platform becomes a place to revisit injury, if every cause becomes secondary to his emotional narrative, and if every relationship becomes a test of loyalty, then his public life will keep shrinking until only conflict remains. At that point, even people who once sympathized with him will begin to step back. This is also why Prince William's perspective matters. William and Harry have both lived under the shadow of Diana's death, but they have processed that legacy very differently. Harry has often placed Diana at the center of his public story. He presents himself as her son, in battle with the same forces that pursued her. He invokes her memory in discussions of the press, security, family pain, and his own need to protect Meghan and the children. William is also fiercely protective of Diana's memory, but he has chosen a far more restrained public path. He does not constantly litigate her story in interviews. He does not use her as the foundation of a media brand. He appears to guard her legacy by protecting the institution she was once in conflict with, while also honoring the parts of her humanitarian work that shaped his own public life. That difference matters. The source commentary argued that William may see Harry's attack on the Daily Mail as particularly troubling because of Diana's own relationship with sections of that paper. Dacre said Diana liked the Mail, that it took her side during the breakdown of her marriage to Charles, and that its royal reporters had access to her world. Whether one sees that relationship as healthy or complicated, the point is that Diana did not simply view every part of the press as an enemy. Diana used the press.
It's the amazing rock star judge who threw out all 97 claims against the Daily Mail, which never happens. Normally they uphold one, which is that the Daily Mail got a parking ticket in 1987 or something. So there's always something upheld. And no, this case was so bad, nothing was upheld. The other thing, so you've got Justice Nicklin, the lawyer, the judge that threw out Harry's legal action against the Daily Mail. You've got Dr. Sophie Chandauka, and then the other big figure that has taken Harry down and taken him down to town, to Chinatown. You are welcome. Take him down and take him down to China.
She understood it. She briefed. She cultivated relationships. She let certain journalists into her emotional universe because she knew the media could help her tell a story the palace did not want told. Harry inherited Diana's pain around the media, but not her strategic subtlety. He fights the press head on, often loudly, often publicly, and often at enormous personal cost. Diana, at her most effective, knew when to speak, when to hint, when to let a photograph do the work, and when to preserve deniability. Harry has very little deniability left. Everything is explicit. Everything is emotional. Everything becomes a declaration. That may be satisfying in the short term, but it is not always effective. William, according to reports discussed in the source material, remains deeply distrustful of Harry. Hilary Ford, speaking to Fox News Digital, was cited as saying that William remains adamant Harry cannot be trusted. Helena Chard was cited as describing a continuing blackout between the brothers and arguing that an institutional reconciliation cannot happen without William, the future king. That is the key point. Charles can meet Harry. Charles can see Archie and Lilibet. Charles can act as a father and grandfather, but the monarchy's future runs through William. If William does not trust Harry, there can be no true return. Not institutionally.
And wasted a huge amount of valuable court time, should never have been brought to trial. That it did raises profoundly disturbing questions about the conduct of elements of the legal profession. Today's verdict is not just a victory for Associated's magnificent journalists, several of whom have had a terrible toll imposed on their health and lives, but a free press generally. Make no mistake, and it was the Mail on Sunday's exclusive picture of Prince...
Not strategically, not in any lasting royal sense. This is why the reported Highgrove meeting is so important, but also so limited. According to the reporting discussed, Harry, Meghan, Archie and Lilibet spent roughly an hour with King Charles, with Queen Camilla, reportedly by his side. Commentators such as Helena Chard framed the meeting as understandable from Charles's perspective, especially given his ongoing cancer treatment and his desire to see his grandchildren. Family matters differently when illness enters the picture. A father may remain hurt, a monarch may remain cautious, but a grandfather still wants to see the children. That human element should not be dismissed. Charles is not only a king, he is also a man facing age, illness, and family fracture. If he has a chance to see grandchildren he has barely seen, it is understandable that he might take it. But critics argue that Harry and Meghan have used Archie and Lilibet as leverage in the broader royal relationship. That is a harsh accusation, and it should be handled carefully. The children are innocent. They should not be weaponized by anyone, including commentators. But the political reality is that access to grandchildren gives Harry and Meghan a kind of emotional power with Charles that they do not have with William. William can say no.
Old Virginia Giuffre in Ghislaine Maxwell's home that ultimately resulted in justice for Epstein's underage victims. Such justice only happened, as with Stephen Lawrence, because of the actions of a free press.
He's absolutely right. This should never have gone to court. All of that money, £50 million, what is that, 70, 75, $80 million? Yikes. And also court time. And Mr. Justice Nicklin and all the lawyers that should be going after bank robbers and burglars and muggers, the sort of people...
Charles finds it harder. That is why the meeting can be read two ways. For the Sussex camp, it can be presented as a victory. The king saw them, the children were there, Meghan was back near royal property, and the family door is not completely closed. For royalists, it can be presented as a controlled, limited one-hour meeting by a father who wanted to see his grandchildren but did not restore trust, status, or institutional access. Both readings can coexist. Harry and Meghan may have gained a symbolic win. The palace may still have kept the encounter tightly contained. The key issue is what happens next. Katie Nichols' reporting, as described in the source, suggested that the king wanted the meeting kept private and that Harry assured him he would not speak publicly about it. That assurance is now under intense scrutiny because Harry's history has made the royal family wary. After Spare, after Netflix, after Oprah, after repeated interviews, the question is always the same. Will this private moment remain private? That is the trust problem Harry has created. Even if he means to keep this particular meeting private, the institution has learned to be cautious. A memory can become a memoir. A private exchange can become a televised anecdote. A family moment can become part of a future documentary montage. Even silence can be strategically briefed through friendly sources. That is why William's distrust is so significant. William does not appear to believe that Harry can be brought back into the inner family circle without risk. And from William's perspective, the stakes are not only personal, he is the future king. His wife Catherine is the future queen. Their children are the future of the monarchy. He has to think not only as a brother, but as an heir protecting the institution his son will one day inherit. That is why an emotional reconciliation between Charles and Harry would not be enough. Without William, there is no institutional reconciliation. Without trust, there is no return. Without discretion, there is no future royal role. This is what makes Harry's current position so fragile. In the same week, he appears to have experienced both symbolic access and major defeat. He may have reached the king as a son and father, but He lost in court, handed his enemies a victory, and reinforced doubts about his judgment. It is a good week and a terrible week at the same time. Good, because the door to Charles is not entirely closed. Terrible, because the legal judgment has damaged the very foundation of Harry's public campaign. Good, because Archie and Lilibet may have had contact with their grandfather. Terrible, because William reportedly remains unmoved. Good, because royal proximity still gives the Sussexes a publicity advantage. Terrible, because that advantage also reminds the public that their brand still depends on royal connection. Harry's defenders will argue that he is being punished for daring to challenge powerful newspapers. They will say the press closes ranks when threatened. They will say Harry has every right to fight for justice, even if he loses. They will say the public should remember what happened to Diana and understand why Harry is obsessed with media accountability. There is some truth in that argument, but sympathy does not erase consequences. If Harry wants to fight, he has to accept that he can lose. If he accuses, he has to prove. If he enters court, he has to respect the court. If he demands privacy, he has to show privacy toward others. If he wants royal reconciliation, he has to rebuild trust over years, not through headlines. The Daily Mail case may become a turning point because it exposes the weakness in Harry's strategy. For years, he has tried to confront every enemy at once: the tabloids, the palace, the Home Office, the courts, his brother, his father, and the public narrative. That is too many fronts. Nobody can live peacefully while fighting everywhere. And Harry does not look peaceful. He looks trapped. Trapped in the past. Trapped in grief. Trapped in the story of Diana. Trapped in resentment toward William.
With this reunion with Harry, Meghan, Archie and Lily. It's my understanding they were together for around an hour. Helena Chard is a British broadcaster and photographer. Speaking to Fox News Digital, she said, "Eager Charles has always hoped to see his grandchildren. He's still undergoing treatment for cancer and family matters more than ever. Despite years of public fallout, he would not pass up the opportunity to privately see his grandchildren." This is true. And what's happened is Archie and Lily have been the trump card. That is what Harry and Meghan have leveraged, and they have won on that one. So it's interesting with Harry and Meghan, but they've had a good week and a bad week.
Trapped in the need to prove the press destroyed him. Trapped between wanting royal status and rejecting royal duty. The tragedy is that Harry still has better options. He could focus on Invictus and allow wounded veterans to be the center of his public life. He could step away from lawsuits and accept that not every wound can be repaired by a judgment. He could protect his children by reducing the drama around them, not by turning each royal contact into a symbolic battle. He could rebuild trust quietly with Charles and, if possible, eventually with William. He could stop using Diana as a shield and start honoring her by building something useful beyond grievance. But that would require discipline. It would require Harry to accept that attention is not the same as vindication. It would require him to understand that losing a court case is not proof of conspiracy. It would require him to stop confusing personal pain with public evidence. Most of all, it would require him to recognize that the free press he despises is not only an enemy, it is also one of the mechanisms by which powerful people, including royals, are scrutinized. That is uncomfortable for Harry because he grew up as both victim and beneficiary of media attention. The press made him famous beyond his birth. It told the story of the cheeky prince, the soldier prince, the damaged prince, the prince in love, the prince who left. It also intruded, criticized, mocked, and pursued. The relationship was always complicated. Harry wants to simplify it into good and evil, but the court defeat has made that harder. The Daily Mail can now say it stood accused and won. Paul Dacre can say the claims should never have come this far. Journalists can say their work was vindicated. Critics can say Harry wasted money, time, and credibility. William can look at the outcome and see another reason not to trust his brother's judgment. Charles can see a son he loves, but also a son who keeps creating risk. And the public can ask whether Harry's crusade is helping anyone at all. That is the central question now. Who is helped by this? Does it help Archie and Lilibet to have their father endlessly at war? Does it help Meghan to live under the financial and reputational shadow of lawsuits? Does it help Charles, already dealing with illness and the burden of the crown? Does it help William, preparing for kingship while carrying a broken brotherhood? Does it help Diana's memory to have her son fighting the press in a way that keeps reopening old wounds? Does it help Invictus, veterans, or the charities that once gave Harry purpose? Or does it simply keep Harry at the centre of a drama that is slowly exhausting everyone around him? That is why this defeat feels different. Harry has lost before.
No, he's either going to run to The Guardian, which wants to abolish the monarchy, or he's going to put it in Spare 2, this time it's personal. And then here we have the big one. Hilary Fordwich tells Fox News Digital, she's very well connected, she's a very wise lady. She said Prince William remains adamant Harry is not to be trusted. Helena Chard adds to that, reports still describe a total blackout between the brothers. There's no sign of the rift subsiding anytime soon. I don't see the Prince and Princess of Wales's absence as a snub, it is strategic. She goes on to say, and this is devastating for Harry, you can't...
He has had bad headlines before. He has been mocked, criticised and challenged before. But this ruling gives his critics something more concrete than opinion. It gives them a judgment, it gives them a number of claims dismissed, it gives them a financial and reputational marker, it gives the Daily Mail a victory speech, and it gives the royal family another reason to keep Harry at arm's length. Charles may still see him. Camilla may stand beside the king. Archie and Lilibet may remain the emotional bridge. But William is the wall. And according to the reporting discussed, that wall is not moving. So Harry now faces a choice. He can keep fighting, appeal, accuse, brief, explain, and relitigate. Or he can learn the lesson this week has delivered. Evidence matters. Discretion matters. Trust matters. The free press matters. And royal status does not protect a person from the consequences of poor judgment. Harry once wanted to be seen as the prince who escaped. But right now, he looks like a man still trapped in the war he started. The Daily Mail did not just win a court case, it exposed the cost of Harry's crusade. And unless Harry changes course, that cost will not be measured only in money. It will be measured in trust, reputation, family, and the slow disappearance of whatever goodwill he still has left.